So another interesting development out of the Baltimore Ravens camp, Lamar Jackson. So there are a couple reports that came out that different coaches, different executives, different people within the NFL circles were claiming that this year the NFL is going to figure out Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson obviously saw these reports and he strongly rebuffed them, saying, I strongly doubt it. I strongly doubt that they're going to catch up and catch on to his style of play. Now, just for some context, because I think context is important. This is a guy, Lamar Jackson, who just won the NFL MVP 2 years ago, became the youngest quarterback ever to win the MVP, threw for over 3,000 yards, rushed for over 1,200 yards, was very, very efficient with his touchdown to interception ratio. Is fantastic. 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a guy that led the Ravens to a 14-2 record. Yes, they got bounced in the first round. Really, I should say that they had a bye in the wild card. They lost in the divisional round to the Tennessee Titans. But that was his first full year as a starter. So the following year, when he actually missed a game, when the league was supposed to have figured out Lamar Jackson after his MVP season, he follows it up with over 2,700 passing yards, over 1,000 rushing yards, 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. And he leads the Ravens to an 11-5 COVID-racked season in which they actually won a playoff game for the first time in his career. That was how the league figured out Lamar Jackson. That's how they bottled him up. They contained Lamar Jackson. And typically we know that, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, if a quarterback has a successful season, normally the following year there's a report on them that kind of lays out and designs a way to try and limit their strengths and prevent them from being quite as effective as they normally would have been. That's what typically happens. So the season after Lamar Jackson won his first MVP, again, at the youngest ever quarterback to win an MVP at 22 years of age, he leads the Ravens back to the playoffs, has another stellar season. So that was his production after he won the MVP. But the thing is, what coaches started to realize was, okay, listen, if the Baltimore Ravens are going to utilize so many run plays for their quarterback, and we're not really sure if he can throw it down the field too far, well, the strategy is, okay, well, let's just bring an extra defender up to the box, crowd the line of scrimmage, show 8 guys, and let the DBs defend the wide receivers one-on-one. And that strategy works if you don't have a talented wide receiving core. But the problem is now, when you don't have explosive individual wide receiving talents, maybe that can work. But now they got the former Kansas City Chief standout in Sammy Watkins. You still have Marquise Brown. You still have your tight end Mark Andrews. I love Devin Duvernay out of Texas. I love the recent draft pick Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. These are some guys that can play now. And so I don't know if that's a strategy you can employ and actually have it work, because, again, that was the perceived outlook on Lamar, was that this is a guy that can't really throw the ball and can only run the ball. And while that might have been true earlier on in his career, the reality is we've never seen a quarterback so explosive, so electric running the football at the quarterback position ever. We've never seen it. Michael Vick, as great as he wasn't this electric run as a runner from a quarterback position. Neither is Kyler Murray, neither is Russell Wilson, neither is Cam Newton, who was a great runner, more of a physical brute quarterback who could run the football. So when I hear stuff like, well, we're going to contain Lamar Jackson, that's under the assumption that your previous strategy is going to work. That's under the assumption that Lamar Jackson won't get better throwing the football. That's under the assumption that John Harbaugh and Greg Roman won't adjust some of their game plans, won't start to design some new plays that are more favorable for Lamar Jackson, will allow him to flourish in his passing game a little bit more, that feature him and his skill sets a little bit differently. That's under the assumption that his own coaches aren't going to make their own adjustments to his style of play. So, yes, can he be a little bit slightly more predictable as a quarterback than others? Sure. But to say, when you factor in the regular season, it's one thing if you were to come to me or you say to Lamar Jackson, hey, Lamar, once we reach the postseason, we are going to figure you out. That's more feasible. That's more believable, given that you have more time to prepare and hone in on one guy. You create an entire game plan around one guy. In the regular season, constant changing schedules, the individual prep time that you have between games, it isn't the same in the regular season as it is in the postseason. He's a much more difficult player to prepare for in the regular season, especially than in the postseason. So again, I just think when you have innate raw athleticism and talent like he has, obviously it's audacious to say that you will contain a guy that just won an MVP in his first year as a starting quarterback. I think that's a little bit ridiculous to me. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes. He obviously won a Super Bowl in his second year, was the MVP his first year as a starter. So I just don't think – I still predict that Lamar Jackson's probably going to throw for over 3,000 yards, or at least near 3,000 yards. He'll probably rush for over 1,000 yards. Now, the only thing so I think he individually will have a fantastic season. The only thing that's going to derail the Baltimore Ravens as a team and their team success is the fact that they play in perhaps the second toughest division in football in the AFC North. And they've got the second most difficult schedule in the NFL this upcoming season. So if anything's going to derail them this year, it's not going to be Lamar Jackson's talent and opposing coaches figuring him out. No, it will be the brutal gauntlet of a schedule that they'll have to traverse and battle through. That's the only thing that's going to serve as an impediment to Lamar Jackson and his individual success, is just the schedule. That's the only thing.